Okay, let's just dive right into this. We're going to unpack the moral and theological arguments for border security by looking directly at two, well, foundational sources, the Catechism of the Catholic Church and, of course, Scripture itself. Whenever this conversation comes up, it's almost always about politics, right, or law or economics. But what happens if we look at it from a totally different angle? What if there's a deep theological framework for this very modern issue? That's exactly what we're going to get into. And look, you're not going to find the phrase border security in these ancient texts. I mean, that's obvious. But the core principles? Oh, they are absolutely there. We're talking about big ideas like the state's duty to protect its people, this concept of a common good, and even the right to self-defense. And when you put them all together, they form a really cohesive moral argument. All right, so first up, the Catholic Catechism. This is our first pillar. And honestly, the whole argument really hangs on one central idea: this responsibility a state has to protect what's called the common good. So what is the common good anyway? It sounds kind of academic, right? But the Catechism is actually pretty clear. It defines it as basically the sum total of all the social conditions that allow everyone, whether you're talking about groups or individuals, to flourish. It's not just about you or me succeeding. It's about creating an entire environment where everyone has a real shot at thriving. Okay, and here's where it gets really interesting. The Catechism breaks this down into three essential parts. You've got respect for the person, the social well-being of the group, but I really want you to lock in on that third one: peace. And listen, this isn't just, no one's fighting. The Catechism defines it as the stability and security of a just order. It's an active ingredient, something a government is actually supposed to provide. And that right there, that's the logical next step. If a state has a moral duty to provide security as part of this common good, then it follows that it must also have the moral right to defend that community. See how one flows directly from the other? It's a really clear line of reasoning. But wait, it's not that simple. This is not a one-sided argument at all. The Catechism is all about nuance, it's about balance, so it lays out both the rights and the duties of a nation when it comes to something like immigration. And this is where you really see that balance in action. On one side of the scale, you have a nation's right. Political authorities can and should set up rules and conditions for immigration. Why? For the sake of protecting that common good we've been talking about. But on the other side, there's a serious duty. More prosperous nations are obliged to welcome foreigners who are genuinely seeking security and a way to make a living. It's a right and a duty, held in this profound tension. And yeah, the Catechism makes it very clear that this is a two-way street. It's not just about what the nation owes, it also outlines some really clear responsibilities for immigrants. Things like respecting the heritage, both material and spiritual, of their new home, obeying the laws, and actually helping to carry the civic burdens. It's about participation. And just to really hammer this point home, the Catechism is crystal clear about the right to self-defense. It's not the first option, not by a long shot. It's the last resort. But when all those peace efforts have failed, it says governments cannot be denied the right of lawful self-defense. It's a fundamental right to protect the people they're responsible for. Okay, so that's the Catechism. Let's shift gears now and move to our second pillar, the Bible. Where do all these ideas in the Catechism even come from? Well, spoiler alert, they are deeply, deeply rooted in Scripture. So the key text we need to look at here comes from the Apostle Paul. When he's writing to the church in Rome, he says something that was and still is pretty radical. He basically claims that governments, even the secular, non-Christian ones, are actually part of God's established order for the world. And here it is, Romans 13, verse 1. Paul states that all authority, at its root, comes from God. This gives the state a real, legitimate, God-given job to do, and a big part of that job is maintaining order. So what does that job look like? Well, Paul doesn't stay vague. He gets super specific about the state's power to enforce its laws and maintain justice. Just a few verses later, he uses this really powerful image. He says, the state does not bear the sword in vain. And this isn't just some poetic metaphor for having authority. No, it's a direct reference to the state's power to use force, real force, to punish wrongdoers and protect its people. So when theologians talk about this, that sword is understood as the state's legitimate authority to use necessary force. It's the tool the government has been given to do its job, to execute justice and to provide that security that's so essential for the common good.
And this isn't just a one-off idea from Paul. You see it echoed elsewhere in Scripture. You've got First Peter saying governors are sent to punish those who do wrong. You have Jesus himself saying, render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, acknowledging our civic duties. And he even recognizes the practical need for self-defense, telling his disciples at one point to buy a sword if they don't have one.
Okay, let's just pause for a second and bring it all together. Think of this as your cheat sheet for the catechism part. You can see the big ideas we talked about, right? The common good and security, regulating immigration, legitimate defense. And what's cool is you can see the exact paragraph numbers where these ideas live. It just goes to show this isn't a collection of random thoughts. It's a really systematic moral framework. And really, that's the whole ballgame. When you put the structured, logical teachings of the Catechism right next to their scriptural roots, a really clear picture starts to form. You get this cohesive moral argument that a state doesn't just have a right, but an actual duty to provide security for its people. And yes, that includes regulating its borders. So, that brings us right to the final question, the one for you to think about. Knowing all this, knowing there's this deep theological and moral framework for state authority and security, how does that change the way you view the really complex and, let's be honest, often heated debates we have about borders today? It's definitely something to chew on.